This is a song. You've got a very important date coming up, the 25th of April, which is Anzac Day. And it's a very important date, and no need to say that. Last time we were here, we're doing a festival in Mount Beauty in Victoria, and that fell over Anzac Day. And I'm not ashamed to say that the tears were just streaming down my face being there as part of the Anzac celebrations. A very, very moving moment in the town. And the whole town sort of came out and remembered. And this particular poem was written by a lady by the name of Cicely Fox Smith. And Cicely Fox Smith was born, I'm not too sure about her, I don't know too much, I don't have too many details about her, but she was born in the 1860s and she died in the 1950s. And she wrote loads of poems about the sea. She went to sea, I think, and was a sailor, sailoress or whatever they're called. And she went and wrote lots of poems about the sea. And people over the years have written some fantastic tunes for a lot of her poems and incorporated these poems into songs. People sing them all over the place. And a friend of mine sent me this poem because he thought I might be able to make it into a song. So, and I just looked at it, and as I looked at it and read through it, the tune sort of came up off the page. It's called Leaving Anzac, and the thing that I find quite remarkable about this is that she wrote this poem in 1916, almost exactly a year after the Gallipoli landings. And of course, nowadays we think that a year, to take that long a year to write that poem is a long time, because nowadays when things happen the other side of the world, we hear about them a split second later, because communications are so fast nowadays. But in those days, a year. And the thing is to actually absorb it, to absorb the news of the Anzac and feel moved enough to write a poem about it, I think is quite remarkable. And so it's just called Leaving Anzac. And just the story I like to tell about this, last year, my father was killed in the war, in the Second World War, at the D-Day landings. So I was just a baby, I never knew him at all. And my mother could never talk about him. My sister and I never really knew much about our father because, you know, my mother always used to break down, so we didn't like to press her about it. But cut a long story short, we found where he was buried in northern France, in Normandy. And my favourite wife and I, Dan couldn't come on this particular trip. She's back in England, and we were over in France in November. And in England we have Remembrance Sunday is the nearest to the 11th of November, the Sunday nearest to the 11th of November. And Dan and I were over in France, and we were coming back on the November the 14th last year, which was the Remembrance Sunday. So we pulled into where my father's buried, in Vier, just near Vier in Normandy. And we pulled into the car park on the Sunday, sort of midday, and there's one other car in the car park. And so we pulled in, parked there, and it was a Belgian car with Belgian number plates on it. And so we walked into the cemetery, and there's 800 graves, 800 young lads buried there. And these two couples were walking around in the cemetery. And so we waved to them, and they waved back to us. And we went over to my father's grave, and we put our poppies there. Dan and I put our poppies there, and we stood there for a while and just sort of thought about things and everything. And then we came back. And as we got back to the gates, the exit of the cemetery, these two couples, these Belgian couples, were there at the gates. And they were, do you know how sometimes you have that real affinity with people? You know, you just meet someone and you're immediately friendly with them. And they were fantastic people, they were really friendly people. And they started talking to us, they spoke perfect English. And they said, asked us what we were doing there, and we explained that we'd gone to my father's grave, and they told us why they were there, and then the conversation went round and round, and eventually they asked me what I did. And I said, well, I play a bit of music and sing a few songs, and they said, we play music as well. They said, would you like us to go back to our car and get the bagpipes out of the car and come and bring them into the cemetery, and we'll play them over your father's grave? And it was one of the most amazing experiences I've ever had, I think. I just stood there, and Dan and I mean, we were, you know, tears were streaming down, and it was just one of those sort of very, very moving and a fantastic moment, absolutely brilliant. Got back to England and phoned my sister to tell her what had happened. And she said, that is quite extraordinary, she said, because if you'd got up that morning and put your socks on backwards, my sister's a bit strange, and she said, you know, if you'd stayed asleep for a little bit longer, you'd have missed that, because you'd have been 5 minutes later and that whole opportunity would have gone. So it's a very special moment, that. So this is the Cicely Fox-Smith leaving Anzac. Come hump your swags and leave me, lads, the ships are in the bay. We've got our marching orders now, it's time to come away. And a long goodbye to Anzac Beach, where blood was spilled in vain. And we're leaving it, but game to fight again. But there are some who will not leave that bleak and bloody shore, and some who marched and fought with us will fight and march no more. Their blood has stained till Judgment Day the slopes they stormed so well, and we're leaving them, lying where they fell. Australia's sons are lying there, the bravest and the best, and many's the man will leave behind. Their days have come to rest. We've done with all our yesterdays, tomorrow's still our own, and we're leaving them, lying all alone. Oh, there are some who've gone beyond the praising and the blame, and many a man will win renown, but none more fair fame. They showed the world Australia's sons knew well the way to die, and we're leaving them, quiet where they lie. Yes, we will leave these lads behind, lying where they died. They are in our hearts and in our minds, their glory and their pride. Around them sea and barren land, over them the sky, and